I always say that about you too, that you're like one of the best coaches when it comes to coaching and what a coach is about. That's like Loren Landow should be like your name should be right there.
I appreciate that.
Because it is elite, brother. And it's, things that you would say to me like, don't sacrifice what you want the most for what you want right now. You used to say that to me because I was such a wild boy. I was so wild. You'd just be like, dude, quit partying. Yep. And I'm like, all right, fine, I will.
Dude, there's a lot of those conversations I've had over the years with other players too. You weren't the only one.
I know. My name is Derek Wolfe. I'm a Super Bowl champion and a 10-year NFL vet. Now, after a decade of professional football, I'm focusing on my other passions. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Wolfe Untamed. Today's guest is a good friend of mine, Loren Landow. He was my strength coach with the Denver Broncos, but before that, he was my personal strength coach. And he's coached kids from Christian McCaffrey to Missy Franklin, Olympians and all pros, UFC fighters, UFC champions. This guy is one of the best strength coaches in the world, Loren Landow. Loren, thanks for coming, brother.
Appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you being here, man. It's it's been a while since we got to hang out because you left. You left me for Notre Dame. Everybody that I love leaves me for Notre Dame. Brian Kelly leaves me, and then Loren Landow leaves me. But no, I'm really happy for you, brother.
I appreciate it, man. It's been a blessing for me to have this next chapter.
How is it? What is everything? What is the vibe like over there? What is you asked me a couple days ago to send you a video, explaining, how important you were to me in my training, and I was like, hey, come do a podcast and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, I think a lot of it. So I'm learning so much about college football, first and foremost. So just the understanding of the recruitment process and everything like that. So what we were trying to do was get a few of my former athletes to pull together and say a few words about me as far as a leader and somebody who was coaching you. And so I'm learning a ton about the college game, like on the recruiting side. Mm-hmm. But it's funny, when I was interviewing for the job, and everybody I interviewed with, they said, just wait till you see the student athlete at Notre Dame. They're just different. And, you're going to get a hardworking group. You're going to get a smart group. You're going to get a passionate group. You're going to get a coachable group. And so all those aspects of it, when I had my first interview with the media, they said, what do you think? I said, they're as advertised. So as far as the vibe around the campus, like the student athletes are great. They're hardworking, but there's just something special about South Bend. And it's hard to really put your finger on it, what it is. It just feels different.
Yeah, there's a history there. Growing up on that side of the country, Notre Dame always had this, especially because Lou Holtz was from my hometown. It was like this. Notre Dame was just so big. It was just bigger than life to us. But I want to talk a little bit about what you've accomplished leading up to this point, because for me it's like, oh, why would you want to go do that when you have such a successful business plan? Or your business model is genius and dominates especially the Colorado market. You got guys from all over the country that come to train with you, and you're like, you know what? I want to go be a strength coach. And anybody that doesn't know who Loren Landow is, look him up. But I'm gonna talk about some of your accomplishments right now, and I wrote them down here because there's so many of them. But you've got over 25 years of experience training elite athletes, not just guys.
That means I'm old.
Nah, it's crazy because you don't look your age at all, because you take care of yourself, and that's the most important thing about a strength coach, is that you don't want to be trained by somebody that looks like a slob.
Yeah, there's plenty of them out there.
I've had plenty of them. I've had a couple of them, and I was always like, what does this guy know? He's not even practicing.
He's not disciplined enough himself.
Yeah, he can't do it himself.
Yeah.
But those are also the guys trying to feed us gravy to gain weight, So it was, it was not good. And then you founded Landow Performance. So when did that start? Because I know you started in your garage, right?
Yeah, well, funny enough, it's been something that's been a process for the 25 years. I'd say it's taken on different iterations. Really, Landow Performance started as, the Steadman Hawkins Orthopedic Group. When I was their director of performance, we built out a model that was really ahead of its time, that had the orthopedic side, the physical therapy side, the recovery side, and then the training side. And I kind of brought that idea to the table. And we got to you get to a certain point in business, and I just told my partners, I said, look, we either build this thing bigger or we walk away. And, they were comfortable in their space. I don't think they wanted to really go into a bigger facility. And I knew we were bottlenecking our business. So I said, okay, I'll buy you guys out. And that's what I did. And so ultimately what happened, it was a transition of names. So it was Steadman Hawkins Sports Performance. And then I took it over and it became Landow Performance.
And that's a big step, because Steadman, that name carries a lot of weight, especially in the state. They have the best surgeons in the world. They have, if you want to get your hips done, you go to Philippon. You go, it's just, the list goes on, and surgeons that they have that, are probably being referred to you, because that's what I wanted to get into next, is that, you authored 2 books, right? When people ask me about strength and conditioning for like these MMA fighters, I'm like, Loren wrote the book on it, literally wrote the book on it.
Yeah.
So what made you want to, like, how did you come about that? Like, how did you think, like, how, like, the way your brain works just always blows my mind, because you'll like see me do a movement and you'll be like, oh, I know what'll make it even better at doing that. And then you come up with something. So is that what it was? Were you just watching the way the guys fought and you were like, you know what, I know how to make them even better at this, like conditioning wise?
Yeah. I think it's funny. When I first got involved with MMA, like I really didn't know much about it. And Brendan Schaub, who I had trained, who played, in the NFL and played collegiately, got into MMA and said, I want you to be my strength coach. I said, great, but I don't know anything about the sport. So what I started doing, I started going to all the practices, and I had to learn the sport. I had to get an idea of like all the different disciplines, get an idea of how they were conditioning, what their history of strength training really was. And it was ironic to me that a lot of the strength training for most MMA guys, they were doing CrossFit or they're just doing high intensity circuits all the time. And I was like, gosh, they're missing the strength component of strength and conditioning. So oddly enough, I just kind of went down that rabbit hole of like, if I can keep you in your weight class, but I can make you stronger, more powerful, and still make you better conditioned, you're going to have an advantage if the skill sets are even. And so that was some of the things that we saw with our guys. I always paid attention to, were we getting wins late in a round? Because that told me that we had power late, or were we getting unanimous decisions, which showed me we dominated the whole fight. That told me right there, if the program was working or not. Now, there's plenty of times where you can have a great training camp, you can have all these great things happen, and still lose.
Well, so you can get knocked out in the first punch,
Yeah.
That's the way that sport is. It's wild.
I always told my football players, I said, imagine being up, 56-0 with 10 seconds left in the fourth quarter and you can still lose.
Yeah.
And that's MMA in a nutshell. Like, it doesn't matter. Take Kamaru Usman's fight against Leon Edwards, right? Dominated the entire fight, and Leon catches him, and it's just how the sport works. It's very unforgiving.
Well, that's why, like Max Holloway, he's winning the fight, right? And he, at the end of that fight, he stands in the middle and tells Justin Gaethje, who is, like, you want to talk about somebody that causes damage and chaos.
Oh,
he just says, "Come on, meet me in the middle."
There was no upside for
no
Max
upside at all.
No,
but it worked out for him. You know what I mean? He took that risk and it worked out for him. But that's just like that's that sport. It can change in a second. You can have a guy. That's why you'll see a guy that's like, he's about to choke somebody, and then he gets reversed, and then just gets ground and pounded and then TKO'd. Yeah. Like, things can happen so fast, or a random elbow can catch you and cut you, or like Justin got kicked in the nose. It
right
broke his nose.
First,
that changed the whole fight. You know what I mean? Like that. Those kind of things can change the whole fight. That doesn't really happen in football. Like, you have a helmet on and you can hurt your ankles and your knees and things like that. But, it's like you can compensate a good bit, right? But whenever it comes to your nose and you can't see or breathe, like...
he breaks his nose in the first, and then I think he had 2 eye pokes in each eye. And so now you lose 2 senses in the middle of a fight. Like, that definitely takes away from your ability to attack or defend. But I would say, the biggest thing that I did, Derek, when I was looking at that is, one, I'd look at the movements they were doing. I'd look at the bulk of conditioning. Where do they need to be strong? Where do they need to be powerful? And what I did when I first got involved, I created a list, and it was every practice they had, and I did a color coding. I did a red, yellow, and green. And I gave it to Nate Marquardt, and I said, do me a favor. When you go to your practices this week, mark down if it was a hard practice by it being red, or if it was moderate, yellow, green, easy. And I said, tell me how it was as far as the difficulty, and then how long it was. So I give him this sheet, and I get it back the next week, and there's 13 practices that he had that week, and they were almost all red. And so I went immediately to like Trevor Whitman, Amal Easton, and Leister Bowling, who were all the coaches for the different disciplines. I said, "You guys aren't out of shape." I said, "If anything, they're doing too much." And I said, "We have to have days where we build in technical days and days that are just conditioning and days that are then hard live sparring." I said, "But if you have a fighter coming back after 13 sessions, like he might limp into that fight that night and not be fully recovered." So we kind of learned. I had to learn a lot. I had to educate a lot, and it was trial by fire. And we got to a point where we were pretty successful. And even to this day, we hold like a 70% win-loss record. So
Yeah.
in MMA, that's tough to do.
And I mean, like for me, like a guy like Neil Magny, right? Like that dude, his gas tank is unbelievable. That last fight of his, like he was like, he just outlasted him. He just was like, "I'm going to outlast you." And then he just turned it on at the end. And that's what you always talked about, was peaking at the right time, right? It's like in a fight, it's different because it's just that you're training for that one 15 to 30-minute moment, right? In football, it's like this long, crazy marathon. You know, you would get us ready in the off season, and then by the time training camp came, it was like, okay, now we're in training camp. You can't burn yourself out before you go to training camp. So you would just like build us up, and I always felt like that's why I started training with you, because after that, in 2014, I played my best football that next season. In 2015, we won a Super Bowl because you had me. I peaked at the perfect time.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the problem. I think, everybody puts this, you got to work hard, which is great. But if you work hard in January, February, like I don't want you in your best shape in March and April. I need you to be in your best shape leading into that season. That's what training camp's built for. So the way I always looked at it is I'm using each month of the off season to prepare you for what's coming up next. Whether I was in the facility in the NFL or out of it, I knew I had to have you ready for April for the OTAs and get ready for the mandatory mini camps. Like I knew that it was building blocks. But if you try to throttle, 22 to 36-year-old people, like some people are going to break in that time. So you've got to be smart with how you dose the workload.
Yeah. And that was always my thing, was I'll go hard, but like, as long as I can, give me the recovery so I can go hard the next day and the next day and the next day. But it's these coaches that will just like drive you into the dirt in training camp, and then you hit the season and you're like, "Dude, I'm wrecked." Yeah. I mean, what coach I'm talking about. We don't have to say his name, but
yeah, you don't have your legs, or you just don't feel like you can be you. And that's one thing I never want to do. I never want my workouts to not allow you to go do what you need to do on the field.
Yeah.
Whether that was for practice, because for me, practice is like, those are those technical and tactical reps that you have to get. And if I've smashed you, I learned this in the MMA game. I would put a hard workout on our fighters, and then the wrestling coach would call me up. He goes, "Dude, the guys looked awful today. What'd you do to them?" And so I realized at that point in time, like my bias or my workload that I put on them actually hurt them for the technical, tactical sessions that protects them and allows them to win. So it's a series of trade-offs during the time of the year of which levers you push and pull to get the right workload.
And you know what? You said it, the communication. You communicated. Like, I love Trevor. You set me up with Trevor, and I love that dude. Like, he took my striking to another level. Like, I took that onto the field with the pass rushing and creating angles, and it was just next level. And his coaching ability just to be a coach is like elite. You know what I mean? I always say that about you too, that you're like one of the best coaches. Like, when it comes to coaching and what a coach is about, that's like Loren Landow should be like your name should be right there.
I appreciate that,
because it is elite, brother. And it's, things that you would say to me, like, don't sacrifice what I say that to my kids. Don't sacrifice what you want the most for what you want right now. You used to say that to me because I was such a wild boy. I was so wild. You'd just be like, "Dude, quit partying." Yep. And I'm like, "All right, fine, I will."
Dude, there's a lot of those conversations I've had over the years with other players too. You weren't the only one.
I know it. But it was just like incredible to me. It's incredible to me that you understand, like, you don't have such an ego that you're not going to communicate with other coaches and let them know, like, "Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing this day so I can do it? I can change it up and make it so that we're being the most efficient we possibly can." And I think that's the hard part about the NFL, is the communication sometimes isn't there because you have to communicate between the head coach, the position coaches, and then you have to communicate with the training room, which is like the medical staff. And then and then it goes to the strength coach. So you have all of these people that have to be on the same page. And when they're not, it is a nightmare.
Yeah, it's tough, right? The way I've always looked at it is like you have to have an athlete-centered approach. And if I sit there and I look at you, Derek Wolfe, and I have to sit there and say, okay, between strength and conditioning, nutrition, athletic training, position coach, coordinator, like we all have to be on the same page to maximize your ability so you're the best on Sunday. And I think sometimes like there's just so much information, from data and from practice, and you're just trying to, you're intaking water a lot of times. This is like drinking through the fire hose, that you got to find those windows where you're all able to sit down and talk really on the best behalf of the player. So if you make it an athlete-centered room, that's when it works beautifully.
Well, we know that we had Catapult, right? Mm-hmm. The Catapult that we'd wear, and that would pretty much tell you how much work output you were doing, right? So it gave you what your speeds were, your explosive movements, like what if you were redlining, where your heart rate was for most of the day. And when you have a head coach that says we don't believe in science and we're just going to ignore all that, it blows my mind, because why wouldn't we use it? It reminds me of like the Rocky movie, right? Like you got Rocky in there. He's just training in the mountains and doing all this other dumb stuff. There's no way that he wins that fight in real life. This guy's taking steroids. This Russian is taking steroids and has every piece of equipment and scientists behind it. Like he would have been so perfectly dialed in that he would have smashed his face in. Like it would have never, it's not unrealistic, but that's the way I look at it, is like, if you're really that naive to think that the science behind this stuff isn't real and the data doesn't show, like, look, if you give me 3 days in a row and I'm like redlining it all 3 days, that fourth day, I'm going to be trashed.
Yeah.
And then when the season gets here, you're going to see a lot of injuries coming. You're going to see, I mean, especially as the end of the season gets there, because the real season doesn't start till November. You got to be good leading up to that, but when November hits, you got to be reaching that peak, and then January, February peak, win a Super Bowl, and that's how we did it. That's how we did it the year that we won it. We had Luke Richardson, who was great.
Yep.
And so I was seeing you and Luke, and it was like I was getting the best of both worlds, and you guys were actually communicating at that time, remember?
Yeah, I'd reach out to Luke and say, okay, what'd the guys do? Because if you remember, I was seeing probably 6 to 7 players on that defense that year as well. They would come into me, and I wasn't going to put my ego in the way. I was like, hey, tell me what you guys did. And if I didn't hear from Luke in time, then I would just ask you guys, and I'd work around the things that you've already done. So to me, it wasn't about like, let me prove how hard I can work you. Let me fill in some gaps. That was the goal. But you bring up a good point. I've always believed in 3 pillars. There's technical, tactical, and physiological, right? Whether it's the fight game or if it's football. Those first 2, like, that's a coach's eye. A head coach, a position coach, they understand technically and tactically what they need from you in preparation for game week. Physiologically, we have to look at that as well, right? We need to look at the Catapult and all the science. And I've always felt that what a good scripted program from a head coach does, all the Catapult data does, or all the science data does, it really just illuminates outliers.
Yeah.
Hey, this guy's worked a little bit too much. This guy hasn't done enough. And so it really illuminates that. But typically, like, a good eye of a coach knows what a well-prepared team looks like. Mm-hmm. I will say in the fight game, what I'd always see is, before everybody got on the same page, is the wrestling coach felt he had to take care of your conditioning. The striking coach felt he had to take care of your conditioning. The jiu-jitsu coach felt he had to do the same. And then you have the strength and conditioning coach doing the same. So you had 4 coaches who were smashing an athlete. And at the end of the day, it's like, that doesn't help anybody.
Right.
And so the thing that you're going after, you're actually hurting it. Mm-hmm. So until the communication comes out and you can use some of the science and the data, like, that's what really helps drive the program. And it comes back to like open-mindedness in the communication.
Yeah. And that's a different way to think about it, because a lot of strength coaches are meathead guys that just want to crush you.
They just think, what do I need to do in my room?
Yeah.
What do I need to do in my room? When you have to look at it all.
They want the credit. It's ego, because everybody wants the credit. Most strength coaches they're all crazy to me. Like, I always I'm always like, get along with the strength coach too, because we're all crazy as hell. But I'm a meathead myself.
You're a meathead.
I am. I loved training so much. Like, that's my favorite part of the game, is training for it. Like, I loved it. I loved finding little things I'd get better at. And like, things like, oh, you'd have me hold a medicine ball and come out of my stance and fire that medicine ball. And I noticed that my get off got better and my punch was better. And it's like, oh shit, okay, this stuff actually, when you can actually take it and see it work, that's whenever you know that your coach is doing the right things. Like I always say, Bill Cole, our best defensive line coach ever,
100%.
because he would tell you something, you'd go and it would work. If you just did what he said, it would work. Like if you just listen to the guy, he's one of those coaches where if you just do what he says, you're going to be a good player.
Bill made people great.
Oh, he made average players good. He made good players great. And he made great players like J.J. Watt, unbelievable.
Yep, legendary
players. That's just a few of the guys that he's coached. He's so unbelievable. Hey guys, I want to talk to you about one of my favorite sponsors, Juniper Mountain Coffee. Coffee without compromise. You're getting high quality coffee without the high prices. This is an American company that stands behind their values. They stand behind their coffee. These guys make some of the best coffee I've ever had. It's a coffee I drink every morning. Juniper Mountain Coffee works directly with the farmers, paying fair wages, and that way you have no middleman. There's no BS, no garbage. You're getting high quality products. So go check them out at junipermountaincoffee.com. Let's talk about your second book then.
Yeah.
Because that's what all pro performance training.
Yep.
And you got Christian on the front of that one. I think,
yeah.
right?
You know what?
Christian McCaffrey is watching him come out of high school. And then even watching like the athlete that he was in high school at Valor right here, I was like, holy shit, this guy is like unbelievable. His footwork was so crazy because you started training him at a young age, right?
Very young age. It's funny when he was one of the athletes that I asked for a video of as well. And, in the video, it's like, gosh, he goes, Loren taught me how to run. He goes, Loren taught me how to run. So it's pretty funny to kind of look back at the journey and the chapters of my life. But, that book came out, he had an incredible combine that, he's God-given great athlete, but he's so coachable. And, people always ask me, like, are you surprised the success he's had in the NFL? I said, no. I said, he's dominated every level he's been at. Like, not performed well, but dominated. And once the speed of the game slowed down in the NFL, you knew he was going to dominate. Once he got enough touches, he was going to dominate it.
Yeah, with the right court, like he's in the system he's in now.
Perfect.
He was already kicking ass at Carolina, and they weren't very good.
Yeah.
And now look at him when he's got like an elite team around him. I mean, he makes everybody around him better.
100%.
And I don't know if you saw it, but Shanahan said he said that he's like a first ballot Hall of Famer, but he acts like he's going to get cut tomorrow.
I'm telling you,
like trains and prepares like he's going to get cut tomorrow. And that's how you stay around. That's how I always felt that way too in this league. My wife will tell you, she's sitting right here. She'll tell you, when the draft came around, I got all anxious and nervous and was like, I got to go train right now because these guys are trying to take my job. But that's how he takes that approach every day, that he's going to get cut. I don't know if it's because he's a white boy carrying the ball or what it is, but he has that mentality of like, it's fun to be around him. Like I loved being around him in the gym. Like I loved talking to him. Even when he was like in college, he just had I was like, this kid's special, man. He's special. Like a whole different level than all these other guys. Like he's on another, it's like he's playing chess when they're playing checkers. Like the way he moves and the way he handles the ball and the way he sees the field, it's just incredible, man. And his conditioning, he's never tired. He just goes and goes and goes and goes and he'd take a big hit and he jumps right up and goes like, his dad was an unbelievable player too. So his dad's a great wide receiver, and his mom was an Olympian too, right?
And his mom was a soccer player, and his grandfather was an Olympian.
Oh, that's right, his grandfather.
Side.
Yeah,
yeah. So I think you bring it up. I think he carries such a chip on his shoulder, and I think he's kind of the middle child in that family, and everybody was a collegiate player, and everybody has like these high expectations in that family, and I just think it's just how he was always. I said to our players at Notre Dame, I said, the one thing I know about my high performers, they're chasing someone, okay? And whether there was a D lineman that you were chasing, you wanted to be better than, or you wanted to be just as good as, but the real high performers know that they're being chased. And so I think that's the same mindset you talk about, the same thing that Christian thinks about is like, somebody's coming after my job. Somebody wants my seat. And as I told my guys at Notre Dame too, and I told you guys, it's easier to be invited to the table than it is to be asked to stay. And that's the nature of one percenters. They understand that they can be replaced at any time. And so that's what keeps them getting up in the morning. That's what keeps them on top of their game.
Yeah, especially in the NFL, man, because there comes a time when you become too expensive, no matter how good you are.
Absolutely.
Unless you're taking snaps and throwing the football and handing the football off. So I'm talking about the quarterback. Unless you're the quarterback, you are replaceable. And even then, they let Peyton Manning walk.
Tom Brady, Peyton Manning.
Tom Brady walked. Both of those guys went to another team, won a Super Bowl.
So cool.
So think about that, you know. And I don't know, being around guys like Peyton and DeMarcus Ware. Like, remember how DeMarcus was?
Oh, same.
He was the same way. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer, but like when you're around him, you're like, dude, this guy trains like he's gonna get cut tomorrow. Like that's how he works out and trains. And Elvis Dumervil was the same way. He acted like he was gonna get cut tomorrow, but he's like one of the best pass rushers of all time. You know, and then it's crazy because then you see guys that have all that ability. I'm gonna use Vaughn as an example. When he has all this crazy ability, and then when you see him like really put it all together, it was like, holy shit. Like I couldn't believe what I was seeing sometimes. Like a guy that can run, he can weigh 240, 250 pounds, run a 4.4 and be like 3 feet off the ground.
And blast right through a tackle on a bull rush
and
too.
Bull rush him straight to the, but then like you take him in the weight room and he's like struggling with, 250 pounds, he's like,
Yeah. Vaughn's strengths and his eliteness is what he does on those lines on the field. That's one thing I always talked about with Vaughn. I was like, you're the freakiest person I think I've ever seen athletically. Like the things he did and does, it blows your mind. Like you can't comprehend it.
Yeah, it's not normal. But even like DeMarcus, like I remember, I don't think you were coaching yet. No, I don't think you were there. But he walks into the weight room one day and we're doing I was doing like cleans or something. I was just doing like getting some power movements in. He comes in there and puts 405, doesn't even warm up. He puts 405 on the bar, racks it, and does it 10 times, cleans it like above his chest. Boom, boom, so fast. And then sets it back. And I was like, dude, what are you?
Just the grip strength to hold
That's
that.
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like doing deadlifts with that is like heavy. You know what I mean? And I will say this though, like my power was when I was training with you on a regular, my power was crazy. Remember my cleans, like we were pulling 425, like it was nothing.
That was an
accident.
We just kept putting on weight. Let's see what you can do.
Yeah,
let's see what you can
keep
do.
Going.
I was like, it looks pretty good.
Yeah, we just kept going, kept pulling it, and I think we got to like 425, and you were like, you told me before that it was like 365 or something.
I think I said 385, and then I actually did the math because we had some of those plates that were still in kilos. I'm like, actually, that was a little bit more.
That was a little bit more, like 415 or something. I was like, no way, that's the most I ever pulled. You know what I mean? I couldn't believe it. But from the way you did, the way you trained is like it was position specific. So why would a quarterback and a D lineman do the same workout? Like that's just silly. Anybody that with half a brain knows that that's silly. All right, guys, I want to talk to you about a product that I've been using for a long time, over a decade. When I was playing football, one of my main staples in my diet was bison. I got my bison from Great Range Premium Bison. They make some of the finest cuts of bison you can get. These guys have ribeyes, ground beef, all the steaks that you want. My favorite part about Great Range is that you don't have to worry about antibiotics or growth hormones in their meats. Great Range Premium Bison is a family-owned company providing bison meat from family-owned ranches around the country. So please go check out greatrangebison.com. I'll never forget John Elway calling me and goes, "Hey, you train with Loren, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Should we hire him?" And I was like, "Yeah, fuck yeah." Absolutely. I was like, "You mean I get to train with him every day? I don't have to,
pay for it?
I don't have to pay it? I don't have to pay for him? Yeah, fuck yeah. Hire him, you pay him."
This is a win-win.
Perfect. And I get to go to his facility for free? Perfect. Let's go. So he was like, "All right, cool." And I know he called a couple other guys too. And that just speaks to like what kind of impact that you had on us, So you were there, you came at, what was it, 18? 18, which was a tough year.
Mm-hmm.
That year sucked.
18 was tough.
Beat.
We had everything in our control up until we played San Fran in San Fran. We had the playoffs in our sights.
Yeah.
And we let it slip through our fingers to a team that was like, at that time, I think they were 3-12, 3-13. They were not a good team.
Yeah, and that's the thing about the NFL that I try to explain to guys that they don't get it, especially fans, they don't get it. I'm like, listen, dude, this isn't college football. Like, there is no fish. Like, there's no fish out there. And for people that are listening, a fish is like a player that you could just kind of like whip his ass all day, and it's not going to be a tough game for you. The NFL, every guy out there is the best player in college football. Every guy on that field is the best player on your college football team. You know, not your Division III school, your Division II school. We're talking about Division I Power 10 teams or Power 5 teams. We're talking about best of the SEC. We're talking about the best of the best. Every day you're practicing against those guys.
Yeah.
So like there is no day off.
No
like,
day
there
off.
is no chill day. There's no I'm just gonna whip this guy's ass all day. Like, yeah, I would have that mentality. Like I know I'm gonna whip this guy's ass, but that's because I knew that I'm gonna outwork him. But he's still gonna get me.
Well,
Like,
they
he's
get
gonna
paid
block
too.
me sometimes too. Like
They get paid to play this game too.
But as long as I get him more than he gets me,
Yeah.
then that's all that matters. You know, like he's gonna get his, but I got to get mine's way more than he gets his. So that's how I always looked at it. Was like he's gonna win some, but I got to make sure that my win column is just way above his. And that's how I played every snap, was to just try to win the snap. You know, win that down, get to the next one, win that one, and sometimes you're gonna lose, right? But the way I looked at it is, if I win 1 out of 4 or 3 out of 4 snaps, I'm 75%.
Yep.
And that's perfect for me.
The goal is to, I tell our players too, is like, you got to look at a game, whether it's you look at the game or you look at the season, you have to look at it as rounds of the fight. And our goal is to win in a unanimous decision at your position, win the unanimous decision by the end of that game. And so to your point, you win 3 out of 4, you're winning the unanimous decision at the end of that fight.
Right. So what do you, that was your first actual head strength and conditioning job.
Yeah.
So what was that like? What was that transition like for you?
It was unique for me. There was a lot of learning, and I had kept 2 great coaches on my staff, Cedric Smith and Anthony Lamondo, who were awesome, and they kind of helped walk me through the deep waters of that first year of the NFL. Ironically enough, to me, it was a breath of fresh air to kind of see how it's laid out and to see really what the demands were. All along, when you're on the outside, you have an idea of what the demands are of the practices. You know what a game is. Everybody can sit there and go, okay, you're going to play between 60 and 85 snaps a game. And, a lot of positions are going to rotate, but then you have your O-linemen, your DBs, and who don't necessarily come off the field that much. So linebackers as well. So you look at those things and you say, okay, here's where I need a little bit more volume. Here's some guys I need to pull back on. When you have your core special teams guys, you got to make sure you're getting enough workload and volume that way. So it was always good to see it unlay right in front of me. You always had an idea, but it was good to see how practice scripts and everything like that really happen.
Was it different? Because I know when I tell people that we would like do squats and we would lift legs on Mondays after a game Sunday. What are your thoughts on that? Because when I try to explain it to people, they don't get it. And I'm like, dude, that's the only day you can get that.
It's the only day you can get it in without it. You have to, every decision you make in strength and conditioning, you have to think risk and reward.
Yeah.
Okay. One thing I will know to be true, whether you believe in the science of it or not, guys, after a game on Sunday, when they come in and squat on Monday, they feel great by Wednesday.
Yeah.
But if you wait and do that on Tuesday or Wednesday, they feel like trash the rest of the week. Mm-hmm. Not only that, but then you're setting them up for that Wednesday practice to have neurological fatigue, local fatigue. So there's a give and takes that you have to make on your decision making. And I would say, by and large, 90% of strength coaches do that leg workout, that real dense leg workout on that Monday, because it, in a weird way, it helps recover them from the game.
Yeah, and I always felt that way because I've done it both ways.
Mm-hmm.
Done it on coming in on Tuesday, and I always felt terrible on Wednesday.
On Wednesday
Every time.
practice.
Wednesday was so miserable. And the other thing is I think that like the lactic acid gets pushed out somehow or something, because I never felt that kind of soreness like I did on wait until Tuesday to like do any kind of movement.
Yeah,
going and like sitting in the tubs and all that stuff on Monday. No, let's go in, let's get a lift in, and then let's go ahead and tub and recover.
Yeah, and I think that too. When you play a game, your lactic acid and everything like that, it's already been picked up by your lymphatic system. So really, the soreness that you're feeling is really the micro trauma to the muscles, the tears, the little micro tears that you have in every time that you do a sprint or a quick decel. Those micro traumas are happening all the time. So that's a lot of the soreness.
I've never heard.
It's just like the anytime you have like the actin and myosin filaments, every time there's a contraction, there's a fold over and there's a bridging, and then there's a pull and a rip. And that pull and a rip is just part of the contraction aspect. And maybe that's a really too, redundant of a, maybe I reduced that too much, but that's ultimately
No, that's how you got to do it for me, Loren.
Yeah. Bring it down. But that's the soreness that you're feeling, of those micro tears, those micro traumas, they're not a pull, they're nothing like that. It's just the trauma that happens to the tissue with contraction, eccentric contractions mainly. So that's why if you do a concentric based workout, like in the pool, you're never sore. You do hydraulics, you're never sore, because it's that eccentric that makes you sore. So when you do heavy tempo eccentrics, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds, the next day you can't walk even though the weight was way less. That's where that trauma is really happening.
That's what you were trying to explain to me, what was happening to me in Baltimore. Because I was like, dude, we're doing like 3 seconds down, quarter rep, full rep, 3 seconds down, and doing that for like 12 aside, single leg, like goblet squats and stuff. I'm like, dude, what are we doing here?
And there's a lot of benefit to the eccentric work.
Yeah,
you
to
just
build,
have to,
right? To build.
To build, and there's like certain times a year, like, and then there's a lot more research coming out now that like isometric and eccentric work is really better for your tendon health, and repetition work is better for the muscle tissue health. So there's a lot of new sciences. I wouldn't say new sciences, but we're understanding more. I heard somebody say it today. I overheard somebody talking at lunch. They said, I should have been a doctor because, the human body hasn't changed. I'm like, the human body hasn't changed, but what we know about it is changing every day.
Right.
And they were trying to sit there and say, like, all these other corporations are always changing. I'm like, we're on the tip of the iceberg, what we really know about the human body. Like, a lot of it's like theory and guesswork.
As an athlete, it's overwhelming because you're being pulled in all these different directions and told what is better for you. This is great for you. That's great for you. And everybody's different, right? Mm-hmm. But for the most part, like here's the one thing I will tell you. So you remember Adam Sturr, so Adam was just in town, and I've instead of like lifting heavy and all that stuff, I've been doing like repetition work, and then doing my doing like implementing a little bit of heaviness within that. Mm-hmm. So like trap bar, like I'll do heavy trap bar. I'll do 12s, do 2 sets of 12s, and then I'll do 2 sets of 6s, and I'll go like 365 to 405 on those 12s, and then I'll go to like 550 on those 6s, 550, 575 on those 6s. And that's where I'm getting that heavy part, but there's good rest in between. And we're not like, and we're pairing that with like TKEs and stuff, things for like taking care of it. And I've noticed, that's when you said, you walked in, you said you look lean. I was like, dude, my muscles have like started to lean out way more since like I've stopped doing all that heavy like crazy powerlifting stuff that I was doing. And then I remember you were on my ass for doing those CrossFit workouts. You're like, dude, what are you doing?
Hey, there's a time and a place, but I don't know how many burpees you should be doing these days or thrusters. But,
yeah, it was tearing my shoulders up. Everything was sore. I was always sore. But Adam was just here the other day and worked on me. He's like, dude, this is the best your body has ever felt.
Wow.
Ever. He's like, I've never like moved you around and you've not been just like had something that was like really bothering you. Because it was always like my neck or my shoulders or my hip. Like my hips were good all the way up until I got to Baltimore, which is, I wonder why. But my ankle or something, it was always something. But so you were with the Broncos from 18 to 23?
22, Sean came in and brought in his staff. Exactly. Coach Payton brought in his staff.
Did you have a conversation with him?
Oh, it is, real preliminary, very, very quick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You knew he was his guy.
Yeah, you know how it is in this
but
field.
It worked out better for you.
I
think college football is like perfect for you.
I love it.
Because you get to build men, mm-hmm. right? And that's like that's what you were, when I talk about you being an amazing coach, like I came in to start training with you as I was a young punk.
You're a knucklehead.
Like thought I knew everything, couldn't tell me shit. I was like, I'm strong as fuck. I just work hard. Like, I'll come in here hungover on tequila and we're going to train hard, whatever. And you'd be like, hey, dude, like,
there's a better way to do this.
Better way to do this. And you were like, let's take it to another level. And I was like, all right, let's do it. And you had that talk with me, like, let's make the commitment and let's do it. And I was like, okay, I'm in. And I went full in on that. And I stopped drinking. I stopped partying. I just like started focusing on like my job and being the best I could be. And I went out there and played the best football I've ever played. That those years that I had you as a strength coach, I played my best football. It was just like my movement was on point, my strength was on point. I might even like injury stuff. You brought me back from that dislocated elbow mm-hmm. so quick because I remember I wasn't getting any calls because of COVID, and Abby was like, post a video of you bench pressing.
Bench pressing. I have that video on my phone.
And I had 160 pound dumbbells and we were just knocking them out. And then people were like, no fucking way. You just had like, your elbow was literally going the other way. How are you doing that already? And it's because you instilled that in me. Like as a coach, like I will say, you instilled that in me. It's like, that always stuck with me. Don't sacrifice what you want the most for what you want right now.
I was about to just say that again.
Anytime I'm about to make a decision or decide to go out or do this or do that, it was incredible to see that on the field, like to feel it, right? I was like, oh, my pop was, I was like, I thought I was good, but then it was like the combination of you and Bill Kolar and Luke Richardson, that triple stack combo right there was just like incredible. Cause you were also like, hey, make sure you eat, make sure you do this, like eat this. This is what you should eat after this kind of work.
Well, I think you bring up a good point too. You bring up like, in exercise, like there's gotta be things that transfer, right? We can work hard. We can build the mental toughness. We can do all that. But at the end of the day, when you're working with like an elite player like yourself, like I have to be able to give you things that transfer over to your game. I have to sit there and have the conversation with you like, hey, Derek, I think we need better knee bend. We need better ankle mobility. We need better things like this to give you more options with different moves that you have. And so that was my goal, was always to look at you and say, okay, what are his strengths already? Where are some of his deficiencies, and where can we maybe make him even a greater player? And people ask me all the time, I always get asked, because I've worked with so many athletes from so many different sports. They say, who are the freakiest athletes you've ever worked with? And I always say Christian McCaffrey, Von Miller, and Derek Wolfe. And I say that because like there's very few people in this world at 300 pounds that can be as explosive as you are, have the conditioning that you have the strength, and have the relentlessness that you have. Like it's very rare to find. So those are the things that always really jumped out at me with you, is just how pure athletically gifted you were. You just had to have a little bit more direction.
Yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that, Loren, because you had said that to me many times, and I was like, he's just saying whatever. Cause I always knew I was a good athlete, but I always felt like I had to work harder than everybody else. You know, I don't know if it's because of the background or if it's because I was a white boy playing D-line or, I never saw myself as like elite athleticism. So I always felt like I had to make up for that with my work ethic. And then once I took that work ethic and then like applied it the right way, not just like a meathead, bonehead, dumb D lineman, and put some science behind it, which you helped me do. It took me to a whole nother level, man. And it just like, I'll always be grateful for that, because you didn't have to be that kind of coach. Like you really took it personal. We developed a relationship and a friendship that I'll always cherish. And I really appreciate that. But I want to talk about your transition to college now, out of the NFL. And if when you got done with the NFL, and so Sean Payton comes in, you're like, okay, great. We start training again immediately.
Yeah.
You and you actually set me up with Brian Shaw because he had a fight. And I was dealing with some shit on my own mentally, because I was like missing the physicality of the game of football. And I was like, dealing with like
depression
and anxiety, which like, I hate feeling that way, because I have everything that I could ever dream of having. Like if you would have told me I'd be in this position when I was 16, 17 years old, I'd have been like, yeah, right. That's probably not going to be me. Like I'll probably be, hopefully I can afford to like pay for my gas and food and shit. Like that's all I really care about.
Have a shirt on your back.
Yeah. I won't be in prison or something. So when I do feel that way, it's just like, it's silly. And do you think it's because like I'm supposed to be doing those kind of physical things? Like I'm supposed to be wrestling with guys and like being physical with guys and like having that like that tribe, because I started to feel that way again, and then I started doing jiu-jitsu again because that fight with Brian got canceled, and I was like, well, what do I do now? Like I'm training, but it's like, I still need that like that physicality, like where you're grabbing a guy and like you're being challenged and you're getting beat and you're beating him. Like those things are necessary, I think, to evolve.
Well, I think this. I look back to you, and how old were you when you started playing football?
7.
So this has been who you've been since you were 7 years old. So this, you expect this kind of release, this ability to do this thing physically. And then, usually when people retire, I usually hear two things. It's the physicality, it's the chase, like we talked about, and then it's the locker room.
Yeah.
It's those three things that I think guys miss, and it bothers them, and they have this itch that they can't scratch now. I think you're cerebral enough, you're smart enough to understand, like, there's a physical outlet that I still need to have. And that's when I had the brilliant idea of put two giants in a room together and see what happens between you and Shaw.
Dude, he is such a giant. Could you imagine if he wasn't a nice guy?
No.
Could you imagine what he'd do to somebody?
No.
This guy's 420 pounds, and he's like 8% body fat somehow, like 8 to 13% body, like no fat on him.
Yeah.
He's built like I've never not been able to put my arms around somebody and grab them. That was just like incredible to me. The opportunity to, especially to be around a guy like Brian. That dude is just like,
he's a salt to the earth guy. And like you said, he could crush you at any moment. And watching you guys, wrestle and grapple and spar, like, that was one of the most amazing things to me to watch. I'm like, this is like real life, like Goliath right here. It was crazy.
well, I never been picked up and laid down like a baby.
Yeah. Oh, did I hurt you?
He was like, I was like, Brian, dude, you got to stop. I was like, I don't mind you picking me up like that, but if you're going to pick me up,
Slam
me down. All right. Don't
Make it hurt.
He was like laying me down. I was like, Brian, dude, please stop.
Did I hurt you?
But when I went up to his gym, up in Brighton, and we did like this grip strength thing together.
Oh yeah.
Because he the first thing he said to me was like, dude, I got to see what your grip strength is like. Like that's how his mind
Well,
works.
his whole thing was like, God, he's got big hands.
Yeah.
I was like, for Brian Shaw to say that, I was
It's like his hands are huge. He's like, your hands are huge. I can't wait to see what you could do. And so he had like these blobs, like, those ends of the dumbbells. So I got all the way. He was like, he showed me what the gold standard was, and I went like 4 or 5 past that.
Wow.
But then he did it, and he was just going right hand, left hand, right hand, left hand, right hand, left hand. Went all the way down to like the 110 pounds in one hand and putting it up there like that.
Wow.
And then we started doing the fat grip dumbbell, like dead pull, where you just bend over and pick these things up, and it doesn't roll, and it's a fat grip, so it's really like it's all grip strength, and it just slips right out of your hand. And I did like the 196 or something like that. This dude grabbed I did the 230. I think I did the 230. This dude grabbed a 296 pound dumbbell, and I was doing it like in between my legs, right? He bends over and grabs it from his right foot, right? Grabs it with his hand, stands straight up with it. After doing all that other grip stuff, I was like, dude, that's my body weight. That's why you're picking me up and laying me down like that. Because he just picks that kind of weight up like it's nothing. That's why when you see him pick those stones up, like, it's just no problem for him. But when we would wrestle, like I could tell that he's for his whole life been told, like,
don't hurt people.
Don't hurt people. Because he was like, he'd be trying to apply pressure against the fence, and I'd be like, Brian, ram your head into my chin, like under my chin and my neck, and like your shoulder, put it right in my solar plex, and try to drive me through the fence. Like, try to, like, imagine you're like squishing me through the fence. And then he would do that. And I was
can't breathe.
take it right. I'd be like, oh God, get me out of here. Like, you start to panic because you're like, I don't know, like, there's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. But we had so much fun doing that. And I think he loved it because he was actually getting somebody that was strong enough to take him down. Because I could get him moving and grab a leg and just run the pipe. Because I had that wrestling background. So, like, it was just like being in a wrestling room again, but with this absolute Goliath that I had to do everything I could possible not to get underneath of him. Like, when we would wrestle, I just did everything I could to not get underneath of him. Because once he got on top and he learned how to ride legs, it was like, I was like, dude, you could just sit here and hammer fist me and I can't do anything.
Night.
Yeah, I'm just going to go to sleep because even if I'm covering, like, his fit, remember, he had like 22-inch forearms.
Crazy.
Like, as big as my hands are, I felt like I was grabbing.
Wrist control.
No, I couldn't wrist control him. And it was like the most frustrating thing ever because that was like everything for me in wrestling. I just could control everybody's wrist, and I would grab a hold of his forearm, and I was like, seriously, like grabbing a hold of like somebody's bicep, like a big bicep too, not just like, he was just, but he was so much fun to train with because he loved it. He was like, it was something new. He loved learning new stuff. He didn't have an ego. He wasn't trying to hurt me. I wasn't trying to hurt him.
He's so smart too. Like, he's a really sharp guy.
Yeah, he is.
And I remember when Cody called me and said, hey, we have this opportunity, Brian Shaw and Brian's actual strength coach who was helping him through a lot of his strongman stuff called me, said, the guy you need to work with is Loren. So when I got on the phone with Cody and I was like, look, I only know of one other human being that could actually be a partner for him in any type of grappling. I said, let me give him a call and see. And it was perfect timing because Abby reached out to me about the same time. I was like, man, this couldn't have been more perfect. So
yeah, it was like it was meant to be.
100%.
It was, and I really wish that fight would have went through because I was having a blast. Like we were having so much fun. You know, we were going like twice a day, but it's funny because me doing that, I ended up sparring with other heavyweights in there. So like really sparring with these guys. So going like, we would go like 3-3-minute rounds, stand up with shin guards and kicking and punching and choking and all that stuff. I was supposed to be sparring with Brian that day. So I like went in there thinking, all right, I'm gonna spar with Brian. Like it's gonna be like, I know Brian, I know I'm gonna have to like lay off a little bit with Brian. Cause like if I start moving too much, he's gonna get way too wore out and he's not getting anything out of it. Right.
Yep.
So I thought we were gonna be doing like some 2-minute round sparring. Well, then Brian was like, hey dude, his hand or something was messed up. He messed his hand up. So he was like, I'm just going to chill today. And I was like, oh, great. So then now I'm training with these hungry ass heavyweight fight. These guys are hungry, ready to go, you know, and they can't, like me, a pro football player comes in there. They can't wait to just
leg kick you.
Oh, they're trying to leg kick me. But I know how to kick too, you know? So I'm like front kicking guys and front kicking them in the stomach. And I look up and we're doing a 5-minute round. And this is another guy that was a football player at Duke. I think you know who I'm talking about. His name's Ben.
Oh gosh, I don't know if I.
He's
know
a freak, dude. He's a freak in nature. He's like 250 pounds. He's like shredded. But we're doing my stand. You know, my stand up is good. Like I have good stand up. I know how to strike. I know how to create angles, and I have a lot of power behind my punches. And Cody was like, "Hey, pull your punches a little bit.
Don't hit him as hard."
Well, I kept kicking him he like front kicked me, so I kicked him back right in the stomach and then uppercutted him. He was like, all right, pull your punches a little bit.
This is sparring.
He's like, you guys are going to knock each other out, you know, because he hit me hard too. And then I hit him back hard, but we were like laughing about it, you know, because we're just two dumb football players and they're having a good time.
Yeah.
And then he was like, I want to see you guys wrestle a little bit. So I like moved him and got him up against the wall and took him down. And then he tried to Kimura me when we were down there. But I know how to like get out of a Kimura. So I just like almost reversed the Kimura on him. And then I was like, I'm just going to kick him and get back up. And we get back up and I look at the clock and I am tired. And
there's still 2 minutes left.
And my mouth is open, tired. Like if he punches me or kicks me in the head, I'm probably going to sleep. And I look up and there's like 1 minute and 45 seconds or something. I was like,
5 minutes.
And we keep going, and he keeps trying to take me down, and I keep defending. And then finally he just like had enough not being able to take me down. And it was like the last like 30 seconds. He just like chased me all the way across the mat and just chased me, like tackled me.
Double leg.
And he got on my legs. And when we landed, he came with it. Like, that's the one thing I didn't think to do when I was sparring was like, when we'd go to the ground, I wouldn't like, land a punch right away. Right. Just because it wasn't, I had that wrestling background. So me, I'm like, oh,
I'm trying to get position,
right? Instead of like causing damage. So like, that was like, he had that thought process though. As soon as I hit the ground, he was like, right? Like right in the side of the head. And my head bounced off the mat and I covered and I was good. And I almost got out a couple times, but then I just was like, I'm done. I'm done right here. Like I'm so tired. And it's like that first 3 minutes I had taken him down. And if I would have like really landed some punches, probably could have finished him, you know, because when I did that in another sparring match, I took him down and finished him with a head and arm choke. Not the same guy, different guy, but it was like I attacked right away, you know, and instead I just took him down and tried to get position. And then in doing that, I almost got Kimura'd and had to waste all that energy getting out of that. So it's like the fight game. I got to learn all this stuff about the fight game that I just like fell in love with.
It's incredible.
Hey everybody, this episode is brought to you by Black Buffalo. Black Buffalo's nicotine pouches do not contain tobacco leaf or stem. What they do contain is a ton of flavor, and they're packed with pharmaceutical grade nicotine. The magic of Black Buffalo is they discovered a way to make cured edible green leaves behave like the texture of tobacco. And they add food grade ingredients for industry classic flavors. You're in good company if you roam with the Black Buffalo herd. The business was built by dippers with decades of smokeless tobacco use. They manufacture their tobacco alternatives with respect for those products that came before them. Bold flavors, full pouches, metal lids, and a brand that stands for something, American. Their products are also proudly endorsed by brand ambassadors such as MMA Hall of Famer, Cowboy Cerrone, NASCAR champion, Brian Blaney, rising country star, Larry Fleet,
and Rob O'Neill, former U.S. Navy SEAL Team 6. So if you're 21 and older and you consume nicotine or tobacco and you want to join the Black Buffalo herd, head over to blackbuffalo.com to learn more. You can order nicotine pouches online, and they ship directly to most states. Or you can check out their store locator to purchase pouches at thousands of retail locations around the country. Black Buffalo, an American brand, pouches worth respect.
You've done consulting for a lot of places too, like all over the world. I remember when we were training, you'd be like, oh, I got to go to Hawaii, or I'm going to New Zealand, or I'm going here. Like you've worked with the women's soccer team. Missy Franklin, you worked with Missy Franklin in the swimming team as well, right?
Yeah, Missy, from the time she was 11 years old all the way through 2012, 2016 Olympics, and
Christian McCaffrey, Missy Franklin. That's all you need on your resume.
Yeah, there was a nice little talent pool in Colorado in those years. So definitely, the journey that I had with them, and like you said, the consulting. I've been fortunate enough to consult with a dozen NFL and Major League Baseball teams. And, the consultant job is probably the easiest job you can ever do. You come into a program, see what they're doing, give some suggestions, and they may take your ideas or they may not. But it allows them to have like a different set of eyes on maybe what their problems are, right?
Yeah.
And so to me, it was always pretty cool to see the landscape of all these different high-performance teams and sports from all over the world. Like, I was fortunate to see that. Because I would say, like, football has been a late adopter to these high-performance teams. And now you're seeing in the last 5 years, most of these programs now in the NFL and in college have all these high-performance teams, but they're typically been late adopters.
Yeah, well, because it's an old school mentality in a football, in a locker room, or not. These coaches all think that it's just like water makes you weak, and we got to get calloused, and
I'd say it's the culture of the game. Right, it's the culture of the game, and in some aspects, like, those things were good in defining and creating this toughness, right? But at what point is there's got to be a cliff or a tipping point at some point with anything that you implement. You can go too far on the other side and do too much recovery and follow too much science. Like, at the end of the day, this is a physical, barbaric game.
Yeah, it's a man's game.
You have to go to some bad places to be prepared for it. That's the truth.
Yeah, that's what I would tell people. I was like,
you can't.
The place you have to go like go play a football game, like it hurts. Like that, it's a painful game. It hurts you, so you have to like find a way to enjoy that pain, and it starts with, that's why when I say college football is perfect for you, because you get to build men. You get these kids that are 18 years old coming in, and you get to turn them into a fucking animal and send them off into the NFL or into the workplace or wherever. And then you're at Notre Dame, so you're getting the best. Like, when it comes to the cream of the crop, you're getting the cream of the crop.
These kids are unbelievable. And the one thing I talk about all the time, Derek, is like development. Like, if I've got 4 years to develop you, like, my goal isn't to your point, is train the 18-year-old like the 22-year-old or the 23-year-old who's a fifth year. Like, my goal is to develop in time and to do these training principles that we know that are backed by science, that have pretty good, runway of history of success. And so to be able to think about development. The other thing I love about college, though, too, outside of that, is the recruiting side. Like, I can talk to these kids, and in the NFL, like, I'm just waiting to see who we draft, and maybe I'll be in some draft meetings, maybe not. But on the recruiting side, like, I have the opportunity to sit across from somebody and tell them why our program will be the best for them. And also, at the same time, I'm interviewing you to make sure you're going to fit into our culture. Because at the end of the day, like, we can't just bring anybody into this culture.
And that's another question I want to ask you. So I know in the NFL, they're not going to come ask you like, hey, should this guy make the team? They don't even ask the position coach hardly.
Yeah.
Do they ask you that? Does the head coach and did they ask you in college, like, hey, do you think this guy is like a fit for our program?
No, I don't necessarily think I have that conversation, but I just have the reinforcement conversation to maybe what their thoughts already are. But even in the NFL, I remember having some unique conversations with the D coordinator my second or third year, and we had a free agent player at the time. He wasn't drafted; he was a free agent player, and I told him, I said, I go, this kid is your most explosive guy. He goes, really? I said, oh, yeah. I said, he's the most explosive player. And it opened his eyes to watch him a little bit more. And that kid became like a nickel for us the next 2 years. So, like, I think sometimes, like, I open their eyes to things that I see in our room when I sit there and say, man, this guy's really explosive, and I think it forces them to look under the microscope a little bit further at that guy going, you know what, he is. So I think I've been able to have some influence in those types of conversations.
And it'll just grow. Like you're going to see that grow. Cause I know that they did that with I know Longo, like he would be like, that's not, when I met Longo, he was like, yeah, you're our kind of guy. Like immediately said that to me.
Yeah.
And I love Paul. Like I got to see him a couple weeks ago when I was in Cincinnati. He was just back there hanging out because all those guys were back in town. And dude, he was just like, that was the first real strength coach, a guy that like knew what he was talking about. And I had a meathead strength coach in high school, but
hey, and Longo's a Notre Dame guy too.
Yeah, and an Iowa guy.
Yeah,
he coached he coached some really good football teams. So yeah, Longo left us and went to Notre Dame, which I already talked about that. But I'm over it now. I'm a Notre Dame fan because I'm a Loren Landow fan. All right. I'll root for Notre Dame just because I'm rooting for you, brother. Like I always want to see you succeed and kick ass, and I know you will. I'm gonna wrap it up, man. I really appreciate you coming. I'm really happy for you. Really proud to call you a friend, man. So thank you for coming on the show.
I love you, man, and I'm honored to be on the show.
I love you too, brother. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Check us out on YouTube, Wolfe Untamed channel, or DerekWolfe.com, or Spotify, or Apple, anywhere you find your podcasts.